Welcome. Nope. So I so surprised I have a guest with a Christmas tree behind her. I guess that's not going to be a surprise now. But anyway, today I'm very excited to talk with my guest about a wide variety of subjects. You know, uh, when we're recording, when we today as we're recording it, this is December, the darkest time of the year. But there's also the holidays coming and holiday preparation, and that brings light into many people's lives. So today we're going to be talking about how life is a dance between darkness and light, between challenges and things that are really enjoyable. So anyway, I'm excited to introduce my guest and bring her on right after this.
Today's guest, Pat Eidsness.
Welcome back. My guest this week has helped a great many people navigate deeply challenging times. She was in charge of community outreach and educational events at 4 funeral homes. Pat Eidsness is now retired and living what can only be described as a joyful life. Pat is an associate in ministry and plays an essential role in her church. And this is just a small part of her story. We're going to get into it all, but first let me bring Pat on. Please welcome Pat Eisness. Woo!
Hey, Jason.
Hey, Pat. Thanks for being here.
I'm happy to be here. This will be fun.
I want to start with how many kids, grandkids, and great grandchildren do you have?
Oh my goodness. Ro and we have 4 kids. We have 14 grandchildren and we have 11 great grandchildren with one more on the way.
Do you have to keep a spreadsheet of everyone's name?
Not a spreadsheet of their names. I do have to keep something on the wall that my daughter-in-law made me that has all their birthdays on it because I am a real birthday person and it has to be on time. And so I do need help there.
What do you love about celebrating people's birthdays?
Oh man, I guess the reason it's so important to me is that I want all of them to know that we're thinking about them, that Ro and I are thinking about these kids all the time, and especially on their birthdays, and we care enough to get that package to them on time. It just seems like a big deal.
The, that's beautiful. And and another amazing thing, what do you do with your grandkids and great grandkids now in the summer to help them stay connected and to help you and your husband stay connected to them?
Oh my gosh, we have this fun thing. It's kind of morphed into. I know you know all about the family camp piece that I'll tell about, but it's been added on to. We have this bike ride we do, and so the whole family, um, who knows how many, as many as 26 sometimes, kids, grandkids, we ride on a Saturday in July the whole Mickelson Trail. That's 109 miles through the hills on our bicycles. And grandkids ride with us, kids ride with us. That happens on Saturday. And then on Sunday, Ro and I take the grandchildren to family camp, just the two of us and the grandchildren. I think, oh my gosh, hold on, I have a picture here. I gotta get it, if I can put it to the camera. This is all of us one day on the first day of camp. And we're all in one cabin with no bathroom, no anything except electricity. I think we've done it for 17 years in a row.
Wow. How do young people deal with that experience? Because suddenly there's not TVs around. Do they just stay on their phones all day?
Jason, they don't. Um, in fact, a couple years ago, we let them go ahead and have their phones because they were just using them for taking pictures. But now, they do more things on them more time. So when we came this year, we said to the kids, and we got some teenagers and tweens, and we said, okay, let's put all the cameras in this box. I mean, all the phones. And then that was on Sunday. And we said, we'll talk about it on Wednesday and see how you're doing. They didn't even want to talk about it on Wednesday. On Friday night, I charged up all their phones again so they'd have them in the car driving home, and they didn't miss them at all.
It's so interesting because kind of the stereotype of how we think of young people is that they are addicted to their phones, and without their phones, they will be miserable.
They would be miserable, except for the this programming at this camp is magical. It's a combination of the kids doing things with their peer group. Everything's outdoors. Even the where we eat is outdoors. So they're in the fresh air. They're with other kids their age. Then they're doing outdoor activities with kids all ages. We're worshiping around campfires and out on the, rocky mountaintop, and the food's great. So it's magical.
How does the experience of being at camp remind you of your own childhood? Or does it?
It does a lot. And especially the two things. Number one is being in the Black Hills. The Black Hills were always a place that our family went when I was growing up. The only vacation we ever had was a couple days in the summer when Dad came home from guard camp, and Mom would drive the four girls out to Ellsworth Air Force Base where we'd meet Dad, and we would go to the Black Hills just for the weekend and come home. That was our that was our vacation because he used his 2 weeks to do guard camp. Ro and I then, over the years with our kids, Mom and Dad were living in the hills then. They'd retired, and we would go to the hills for Christmas and for all the times in between. So the hills are important to us. The other thing, though, that was so important to us growing up, and Ro and I with our kids and me when I was a kid, is talking over meals. And at camp, meals last a long time. The food's really good. It takes a long time to feed everybody. So the talking over meals, I think, is really important.
So, sometimes when we're thinking of having to have a conversation station over a meal or something, it's like some anxiety comes up because we're not sure what to say next. How how do you observe your grandchildren getting past that anxiety? Or is that even a thing for them?
Oh my gosh, Jason, that you would ask that because you are the one you are the master at asking questions. So that's the answer, is to be open to asking questions. The other thing I think that helps that is when you're comfortable with the people that you're around. When you know them well, you know what to tease them about, you know what not to tease them about, you know what everybody's been doing that day. So these kids have been to camp together. They're mostly cousins, year after year after year. They know each other. They tease each other. Um, we have counselors who are trained to interact with the kids, and then grandma and grandpa who just love the daylights out of them. So it's really easy.
Well, you mentioned when you say cousins, it brings up your grandchildren don't all live in the same place.
Oh my gosh, no, we have them all the way from Washington, D.C. to Casper, Wyoming, to Minneapolis, and then to the Sioux Falls area. So they are from all over. But because they get together for a whole week every year, they know each other really, really well.
That what a very precious thing for the lives.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that we work hard at with our own kids and with the grandkids is encouraging them, loving it when they get together. We don't have to be with them. To see your kids traveling to see one another, spending time together, and then these cousins. It was recently Rose's birthday. Our daughter, for his birthday, she and her husband gave Rose tickets to a Vikings game. And then they invited a grandson from DC, and then our son from Casper, Wyoming, and then a grandson from Minneapolis for the other three tickets. They all flew into Minneapolis to go to this football game with Roe. I mean, what a fun idea.
Oh wow! What a birthday gift!
Yeah,
What a
yeah,
profound gift!
yeah. And they pulled it off as a surprise until just a few days before when we had to tell them.
What was your husband's reaction when you told him?
His reaction when we told him wasn't as much fun as his reaction afterwards. He honestly talked and talked and talked about the fun time they had. He's probably still talking about it. They just had a good time. It wasn't three generations in the same family, but it was grandpa, son, and some grandsons. So much fun.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Did you go? Where did you grow up, Pat?
I grew up in Sioux Falls. Ro grew up in Sioux Falls. We didn't know each other until after he was out of high school, but I was still in high school.
What was your favorite class in grade school?
In grade school, it probably, well, like I told, um, I love math, but I also love English. So that diagramming sentences, oh man, I just love that.
Before we got on the air, Pat announced that she loves algebra and loves diagramming sentences.
What does
And
that say about me? I don't know.
and it's so neat that we all love unique things and use unique things to inspire us and make our lives interesting. It's so neat. So if I had asked you at age 7 what you wanted to be when you grew up, what would you have said?
That's interesting, Jason, because I'm old enough that when I was 7, there weren't a whole lot of choices for a mom. I had some friends. There's maybe a friend whose mom was a nurse, maybe a friend whose mom was my aunt was a church secretary. Nurses, teachers, secretaries. Those were about the only choices. And otherwise, women grew up and were moms and grandmas, and so that's what I wanted to be.
What what has it been like for you over the years to see the options so expand for women?
It has been just an amazing journey to be able to experience that as a woman. And I often look back and think that I got opportunities as a woman because I was a woman. And little things like, oh man, back in the 80s, I learned to fly little airplanes. And I ended up being on the Brookings Airport Board because they'd never had a woman. And it was those days, in the late 70s, early 80s, when there was an emphasis on putting women in leadership. I think likewise, when I ran for the legislature, the district I was running in had never had a woman serve. And so I kind of got to slide through those years when it actually was a benefit. And we saw these new opportunities open up, and I was just one of these ones that always liked to do something new and felt like I could and knew that there was education out there if I needed it to help me do it. And so I got to experience those changes.
So it sounds like your approach is to embrace new things and take on new challenges. What would you tell someone who feels more hesitant, who sees new challenges and is tempted by them, but at the same time feels hesitant? Can I do this? How will it change my life?
Well, first, I need to tell you that some of us really enjoy change. I don't say I like change, I say I need change. And so, but
Mm.
I also have to realize that not everybody looks at change that way. So, for people that are hesitant about change, what I've learned is there's always someone to help you. There's always, education or learning or somewhere, especially now with the internet, you can always learn about what it is. Um, and you learn so much about yourself when you change. So, I do encourage people, but I also am careful to understand that not everybody likes that, and so for them, then how do we find you to do something just a little bit different within the areas that you're comfortable?
There, there's always someone to help you. What an affirmation! It seems so easy in modern society. Maybe it's always been easy to feel all alone and like we're struggling against a world by ourselves or in a small group. When you talk with with young people and adults, how do you help them see beyond that frame of reference?
Jason, you touched on something that is it's getting worse and worse as we go along, and I've watched the change. And it's not just kids who are on their devices all the time and who are facing loneliness. The loneliness and the anxiety among people in our world today is something that all of us, number one, need to understand. And that even somebody that you think seems so put together and so on top of it can really still be lonely. Our devices and just our lifestyle. When Ro and I moved out to the way northwest corner of Sioux Falls, we were called to start a new church out there, and we noticed this neighborhood. Everybody had the 5 or 6 foot fence around their backyard, and in the morning their garage door would go up, the car would go out, and then it'd be all still all day long until 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock. The garage door would go up, and it would go down. You never saw anybody. We live in our own little silos. So you really have to work at it to enter somebody else's space, and to help pull them out of it a little bit.
Um, I know we're kind of jumping around with questions, and sometimes I like to do that because life ties together in amazing ways, and sometimes if we just do things always in a sequential order, we never get to experience those tie-ins.
And you know me, I'm totally okay jumping all around. I tend to do that anyway.
Um, so I wanted to explain that, but then where do I want to go now? Also, you mentioned this neighborhood where the garage goes up and the garage goes down two times a day, and that's it. Will you please contrast that to what's the most neighborly neighborhood you lived in? I mean, not naming names so much as what time of life were you in it, and how did it feel to be in that neighborhood?
Wow. I suppose the two neighborhoods that we lived in when we were raising kids, and all of your listeners will understand this, that when you're raising kids, you have a natural in to interact with the other adults and the other age kids because families tend to do things together. And so when you're in a neighborhood, and I'll admit, even that has changed. When I grew up in the 50s and 60s, all the kids were out and around. All the neighbors knew each other. And even when our kids grew up in the 70s and early 80s, it was kind of like that. We were in Brookings, South Dakota, small town. You knew all the neighbors. The kids walked to school and played with each other. So I think those times when children connect you to the others in the neighborhood were probably the times that we were most involved with all of them.
Just as you described that second feeling, it feel I can feel it in my body. It feels so much different than the first neighborhood you described.
Mhm. You can even just not only feel it, in your head you can see it. There's nobody on the sidewalk. People aren't walking. They aren't talking with one another, which was really interesting for Ro and for me because our job was to start this new church, and so we literally went door to door multiple times through those neighborhoods.
So so part of what you did in your career was work at a funeral home. Part of what you did in your career was start a new church. And part of what you did in your career was went to public office. Would you please connect those dots a little bit?
Oh, Jason, connect those dots. Okay, let me connect those dots. I think we would go way back when I was growing up. We didn't have a TV for, I don't know, probably until I was in early teens. And then we watched cartoons Sunday morning, and my dad watched the fights Friday night, and that's the only thing you watched the TV for. So we
What did your dad watch on Friday night?
fights, boxing
Oh, fights.
on Friday night. So we sat around the table, especially in the evening when dad was home and we had supper. We sat around the table a long time. I mean, the food was kind of dry on the dishes when whoever cleared them off.
It's
And we
a
talked
great detail.
and we talked about religion and politics. That kind of was the thing. And so those were things that I thought people like to talk about and people like to do. And as I look at my life all the way through, that's kind of been the thing I've been drawn to. I kind of got interested in politics even as a teenager then, in the teenage um, political group. And so then when I moved to Brookings and had kids and there wasn't that group available, I started one. Oh, I didn't tell you this about me. I love starting things. I kind of don't like maintenance. I mean, I like to start them in such a way that somebody else can keep them going, but I love starting new things. So I started, the teenage political group that my kids were in, which ended up having me working in the party and then eventually running for office. Likewise with church, I we went to church as kids. Ro, his family always went to church. When we started dating, we would go out Saturday night and to church Sunday morning. So church has always kind of been a big part of our life. My parents were actually part of starting a new church when I was in about third grade. So these things were things that I thought people did. Um, and here's an interesting tidbit. I was sitting here before we came on thinking about those very two things. um, politics and religion. My name is actually Patris, Patris, which actually means love of fatherland or of the father. So it can have very patriotic connotations and religious. That's me.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
It, it's so interesting to me, like politics and religion. A lot of people, including me, sometimes try to. We get afraid of having public discussions about it. But when you grew up, it was just the conversation around the dinner table. So you grew comfortable with it through talking in groups about these things, and it just sounds like it became kind of the way life was to you. Of course, I'll be active in churches. Of course, I'll be active in politics.
And those were different times. I mean, we all have to admit those were different times. I mean, back then, most everybody did go to church. And the other thing was, back then, we could talk about politics without being angry, without, looking up or looking down on anybody for having different opinions. The different opinions just made it richer and more exciting and more interesting, and you wanted to hear more about them. We just can't do that today with either religion or politics like we could then.
Well, so we now buy butter from the grocery store. Obviously, most people do, but that doesn't mean that we couldn't churn butter if we wanted to and make it ourselves. I mean, oh, Pat, huh. Yeah. Speaking of turning butter and technical difficulties, but 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 just because things are so divisive in politics and we're all afraid of talking about religion now, doesn't mean we can go back to a different we couldn't go back to a different way of being with these major parts of life. What do you think some of the ways we could get on a path of going to a more communal, gentle way of talking about these things?
I think the first thing is respect for other people. I mean, just really genuinely liking other people and respecting other people. Because when you like somebody and you respect them, you're willing to listen to what they have to say. So I think this it kind of goes together with this loneliness and this isolation that we tend to do, which separates us from people. And that's why, I mean, one of the things we're really working hard to do in our family is connect people. I mean, we are all over the board on our politics and our religion and our family, but we just,
Even in your immediate family.
even in our pretty close family, I mean, Ro and I are, well, even in our immediate family, yes. But, but we love each other and we respect each other. And so we certainly don't go there and, and, and make each other defend what they believe or kind of like you're attacking them for that. There's so many wonderful things to do together and talk about together that we just don't do that with those who are, far apart from us.
There's so many things to do and talk about together. Are you saying sometimes you don't bring up the issues that would really create the huge arguments.
Oh, absolutely. We just really don't. We, but there's so much that we have in common, and there's so
Mm.
much going on around us that we can talk about. You know, that we just really intentionally live that way together. But 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 back to the idea of just respecting each other, um, and then learning. I think when someone you love sees an issue differently, it makes you see it differently too.
Wins. Yeah, that is so true. We don't have to try and convert each other to our views, but if we see something one way, the other person will at least think about it and think about how that fits, and maybe if they want to.
And I think honestly, if our conversations really are not trying to convert or to change the other person, but to understand and learn from and grow together, then I think our conversations are different.
Hmm. So so as humans often don't like talking about politics, religion, and then there's another thing we don't often like talking about, and that is dying and death. How did you and your husband come to work in funeral homes? Not only one, but four.
Well, for starters, my husband was introduced to it early because his dad was a funeral director. When I met him, he was still considering whether he was going to go into funeral service or be a dentist. And he ended up going.
Going to funeral service or be what attracted him to dentistry?
I have no idea because he didn't end up going that direction, so I have no clue. But when I first met him, those are the two things he was considering. But I think what he saw in funeral service, and this is different than what most people would think, but that is a business that's people, people, people. You mean you're working with people, you're working with people at a very difficult time, and he just responds to that. He saw it and admired it in his dad. And as he took the courses, he found out that he really was drawn to that. I love people, um, and so I navigate that too. But the one thing you said about people, and you're exactly right, people think we don't like to talk about religion or politics or death. But seriously, people do want to talk about death. All those years, and we were like, I don't know, almost 40 years, 30 years in Brookings in funeral service. When someone learned that I was the wife of a funeral director, or someone learned Ro was a funeral director, oh, do they have questions? People really
Hmm.
do want to talk about it.
Hmm.
They just need to be in a place where that's a welcome subject.
What did you find most challenging about working in a funeral home?
Well, to be really frank, one of the most difficult things from my side of it and from a family side of it is the fact that you had no control over your time. I mean, you had no idea when you were going to be busy and when you weren't. And that's kind of hard to plan a life around. Our children learned early to really enjoy the anticipation because you not get to actually do the vacation, or to do anything that you had counted on a particular day or weekend. And so and so you just learn to live that way. But I just think the rewards from that work override anything that would be a challenge. Um, the fact that you could be there and help people through a time that is so difficult that they don't even know where to start. And then, one thing after another, you can help lead them through, help make it easy. It's just a really rewarding thing to do. It's just all about people.
I've never once thought about that being a funeral in the funeral industry is less predictable than farming. There's very little predictability to it.
There is no predictability in it. You know, like farmers say they can't control the weather. None of us can control, when someone dies. And if there's preparation or if there's not, as we as we went through funeral service, we moved from a time where there wasn't much talk of any pre-funeral preparation or planning to a time where we were helping people to do that, which I see as a very good thing. I did some of that work, and the most fun was to be sitting down with a family or even a couple or even a single person and talking about things they hadn't expected to talk about. And they would remember things that were important to them. And so even just the conversation around what's going to happen when I die are really good conversations.
Would you please say a little bit more about pre-funeral planning? Because, yeah, I just don't know much about it.
Well, here again, it's like everything else. That's a whole spectrum to it. You can do as little as writing down at home what you would like, for your funeral, what you would like, what you don't like. If you're at a funeral and it's meaningful to you, I encourage people to, save the funeral, the service bulletin. Write some notes down to yourself, even if it gets no more than just talking to people around you about what you would like and what you wouldn't like.
Hmm.
But I also find that you can now go really detailed. I mean, you can buy your casket. You can lock in the price today. You can buy it, pay for it, all done. You can choose your own, urn or your own kind of service, whether you want to be cremated or whether you want to be buried. You can buy your cemetery property. Oh, that's another funny subject with Roe and I. Um, you can buy your headstones ahead of time. People are doing these things. Two things that does: it lets you live with the knowledge that you've taken care of something that would be hard for your children or your other family members to do. The other thing you've done is you literally have made it easier for them. Because when someone you love dies, what you want to do more than anything else is what they wanted. So when you have before you written down what they want, you do it differently. You do it feeling like, okay, good. I'm doing just what he wanted. And that feels good. That remembers him in a new way.
How does this conversation remain joyful instead of getting kind of morbid? Oh, he's planning his funeral. What the?
Well, there again, we're getting better at talking about those things because people are getting better about planning. And in the years that I was working in that at the funeral home, it was brand new. But I will give funeral service credit for stepping out. I mean, it was something new to have someone from the funeral home send you something in the mail and say, "Have you thought about, what would happen in an emergency?" And so when you sit down and talk about it, it really, you said joyful. Honestly, it really is, because you people reminisce and they tell stories and they learn even things about each other that they haven't talked about. So that then allows the funeral to be more of a celebration of the life of that person. And you hear that these days, funerals being a celebration of life.
Yeah.
And we try to make them that, whether it's from the funeral home side or now I'm doing a funeral Sunday night, and a burial on Monday. We're doing things way different than we used to, but I find joy in doing that because it it helps the family celebrate the life and and find peace in the fact that this person now has gone on to something that we don't understand, but that most of us believe is very good.
So if family comes to a funeral home after a loved one has died, and there's been no pre-funeral preparation. What are some things they can do during this time of great emotional upheaval to work well with the funeral home to so it can become a co-creation rather than just a really painful experience.
That's where a good funeral director and most funeral directors really come in. That people don't really understand what they do. They understand. They've been all of their classwork and all of their day-to-day work is in understanding what makes this easy, what makes this something that brings peace and joy to a person. And so they know the first conversation is let's just sit here and talk about your loved one who died. Let me get to know them a little bit. You know, what did they
Mm,
like and what do you
mm,
like? And you talk about what are your traditions and what's meaningful. And then the funeral homes have so many options these days for how to do it. But the funeral directors, they people are amazed, but like, will you take care of that for me? Well, you'll do that for me. And then we encourage people to do the things that are helpful. You, I'm sure you've all been to funerals where they've got those picture boards or they have a table with the memory things on it. Well, those are helpful.
or a video.
Or oh my gosh, the videos. Yes, the videos. And those things, what they do, number one, they highlight and celebrate the life, but they lead you and everybody there to tell stories. You see something that lets you tell a story about the person. And I think the biggest fear that we all have about someone who dies is that we will forget them or others will forget them.
Mm,
And so, what we try to do through funeral service and beyond is to remember. So, we remember
mm,
by doing those things that help people tell stories. That's what that
mm,
visitation time is for. That's the best time around around
yeah,
celebrating a funeral is a time when people come in and tell stories.
yeah.
um, they hug you, they cry with you, they share your grief, and then they tell stories and you all laugh. That
Mm,
that's what's helpful to people.
mm,
We would also we started doing the post funeral things like going back to visit 6 weeks later, understanding, the grief process and what they'd be feeling like 6 weeks later, and then also knowing that things like holidays and anniversaries of the death were really difficult days. And so reaching out, spending time with them, encouraging them to come and do celebrations of the person during those tough days. I think all those things are helpful.
I'd be remiss if I didn't ask this. How can we help the people who are grieving in our lives?
I would say, and run toward them instead of away. So many
Mm,
people after a death, when we don't know what to do, we do nothing. That's the only wrong thing you can do.
mm,
Doing nothing is the wrong thing to do.
mm,
Reaching out in any way that you normally would, whether that's a card or a call or a hug, going straight to the house, to be with them. Interestingly enough, I tell people what your first response is like, oh my gosh, I need to go see her. Well, then go see her. If your first
mm.
response is, oh dear, I better send a card or maybe take a hot dish, then send a card or take a hot dish. Do something to show that you know and to show that you care. Anything you do is helpful. Where you go toward the person to share that you for sure to share that you know, and then to share stories that you remember. Be there in a week later and 3 weeks later and 6 months later to say, how are you doing with this now? Being open to talk about it. Most of us, and you mentioned this, our natural tendency is not to want to talk about somebody else's death. Oh, we like to talk about our own and plan for that, but to be there and be open to talking about it.
Do we need to worry about bringing up the name of the deceased, like that would trigger bad memories of?
That's exactly the opposite. Bringing up their name is what that person needs to hear. Because trust me, they say that name every day and they love that name. They love that person and they love it to know that somebody else remembers them too. It's not a bad thing to say their name. Go for it.
And I have to touch on this. Like, so you and your husband Will didn't just have funeral homes. You had award-winning funeral homes. What propelled you two from just doing a business to making it award winning?
Well, it was a combination of things for us. Number one was the times that we were living in. We moved from a time when funeral homes didn't even advertise. Oh, maybe on the placemats in the church basement. You
Oh,
know, seriously, to a time
yeah, yeah.
to a time where we did advertise our services, where we did step out and encourage people to start doing some preparation to make it easier for their families. And then we started learning more about grief and grieving. And so we learned that it's helpful to have workshops ahead of time to prepare people for death and dying. It's certainly helpful to have support groups and continuing education and continuing visiting after. And so, and then we lived in Brookings, I told you. That's a college town. That's a town that's open to education. So, so there was
Mm.
response when we wanted to do it. Ro would go, he would teach classes or be guest, lecturer in a class on death and dying at SDSU. Classes would come
Wow.
and tour our funeral home.
Wow.
And so it was one of those. Then we learned that it was good to have a library in a funeral home because you couldn't get, there was lots of good books about death and dying and funerals and grief, but where would you get those books? And so we would advertise that we have a library. Come and check out these books. And then in funeral service, there was this organization called the Pursuit of Excellence. And funeral homes from all over the country would get together and talk about what was working, new ideas for serving people. And then it turned into a competition, where they had these 8 different categories that you had to do all these things and you would compete with funeral homes around the country. And I don't know, I guess we're a little competitive. And so plus we liked the idea. We got ideas of things we could do. And we won that competition. We took second place in the nation one time, and then we took first place in the nation.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow. That's just so inspiring.
yeah, it was. Ro and I work together really, really well. We're really different in our skill sets. And most of all, we respect each other a lot. We just don't like and love each other, but we really respect each other a lot. And so not only in the funeral home for those years did we work together, but then when we started that church together, can you imagine? I mean, um, we like to work together.
Oh, um, that's wonderful. Shifting gears yet again. What is an associate in ministry?
Okay, it's really in most denominations we have what we call a roster, and those are people trained to work in the church in different ways. So like in the Lutheran church where I am, we have ordained ministers. Those are people who have gone to seminary and then they've done internship, and they are actually ordained for word and sacrament, which means they preach and teach, lead worship, and do the sacraments, which for us are baptism and communion. Then there's a roster, which I am commissioned to, the associate in ministry. They've changed the name a bit over the years, but I really like that. I think it describes what I do. Plus, I was commissioned to do that. And we were commissioned for word and service as opposed to word and sacrament. So we preach and we teach, and then we come up with programs that help let us work with people. Let the church reach out, kind of in the same way the funeral home did, to meet needs that we see in our congregation. So technically, my job is word and service, but then it gets complicated because I have been in situations where I have needed to do sacraments, and so I can be authorized to do that. And so, like when I've served as an interim pastor, then I'm doing word and sacrament, and the bishop authorizes me to do so. Right now, I'm at the Lutheran Church of Del Rapids, and I'm authorized to do word and sacrament because my ministry is doing home visits and home communion with people and leading worship. And so somehow I'm called one thing and I'm just doing both.
So a special part of your mission right now is connecting young people and adults and facilitating conversations. How did that come to be such a big interest of yours?
That is a really good question, Jason, because I am, I have done intergenerational ministry and I've studied the generations. Back when I did it working for the Synod, it was more with parents and children, grandparents, parents, and children. When I was called to Del Rapids, I'm working with Jeff Sorensen, who I worked with when I was at the Synod. So Jeff knew I loved this intergenerational stuff.
Mm.
And so my call here was to work among the elders, the seniors in the congregation, meeting their needs, but also finding ways to connect them to the other generations in the church, because we've learned that our elders age more successfully when they feel part of a congregation, when they're connected to other ages.
Mm.
In the process of that, and in the research about the younger generations, I came across what you know so well, and that is that our younger generations are struggling. This Gen Z generation from whose basis of their worldview is from 9/11, through pandemics, through school shootings, through violence in the world, leading to anxiety, leading to loneliness, and then you throw in social media. So I learned that we have these needs in our younger generation that I think our elders can help with just by talking and listening and acknowledging, at the same time that our elders benefit anytime that they are around and engage with younger people. So that's
So it's very much a win-win situation.
absolutely a win-win, and we're watching it happen. I just came home Wednesday night from an intergenerational event. There were about 120 people there, all these
120. And
sitting.
Del Rapids isn't a big town.
No, no, I know. These were little kids and seniors, senior citizens, a little silly play led by the sixth and seventh graders, and then conversation at tables led by the the eighth and ninth graders, and then the all of the elders. They're just soaking it up. That's what we're working on.
Would you please talk a little bit about the work you and I in your congregations have done together?
I know I'm trying to remember, Jason, what this goes back to and how I even learned that you were doing this, because I
One of your relatives sent you my TEDx talk, I
that's
think.
exactly what it was.
Yeah.
Our son-in-law sent us a TED talk and said, you got to look at this. I, at the time, was at Springdale Lutheran Church, and I had these 7 confirmation kids. I looked at your TED talk, and I'm just saying, my kids need this. My kids need to see this. And so we connected, Jason and I, and he actually zoomed in one night with my kids when I was doing an all-nighter with them, which I swore I wouldn't do, but you're with teenagers, so you got to do a lock in. And we zoomed Jason in to talk to these kids, and then we invited Jason to come and talk to the whole congregation, because you were touching on these same things that I was saying that kids need and that other adults can help with if we understand their needs. Kids love listening to Jason. adults love listening to Jason. I've gone on now, and Jason came, to Del Rapids just recently, and just watching the kids interact, and it's not only in front of a big audience. Jason, you can do this with that day that you came to our house, and our two grandsons were here,
Oh yeah, that
10
was
and
awesome.
14. I learned things and just sitting watching them talk to you. And so I'm just talking all of you out there, if you are in a situation where you have different ages together, to have Jason come and talk to them. What I told our congregation is, we give you, when Jason talks, he gives you a platform for you to talk to one another. That's critically important these days. Also, in addition to making us aware of the loneliness, the anxiety, the angst that's going on in our kids these days.
They've been amazing events to be a part of. Thanks for the opportunity.
They really have. Thank you for the opportunity.
So two more questions. So, so you enroll, like I associate you both with high energy. Just you're so passionate about life and excited about life. What's the secret of aging in a way that where we have a lot of energy and stay interested in life?
Well, for starters, we are blessed with good health. I mean, we understand that. I mean, it's lovely to have good health. We also are very intentional about exercise, whether it's walking or bicycling. Obviously, is one of our big deals. Row
Pickleball and
I was just
Rose
gonna
Kid.
go. Row plays pickleball a lot. It's and I don't. It's not only the physical exercise, which he loves, and he's kind of been the one who's been the more adventurous physically. That wasn't something that I really came to naturally, but together with him and for him, I'll do anything. So I've learned to love it. But there's a social element in the pickleball too. You've noticed we're kind of both social animals, and so the social part of the biking and of the pickleball and going for walks and talking to neighbors, it's rejuvenating.
Inspiring. So in my work, as you know, I talk a lot about the power of doing our imperfect best. What does doing your imperfect best mean to you, Pat Eisness?
I think it means not being afraid to step out and try something new, even though I don't have a clue whether I'm going to be good at it, but just trusting that between the people around me and places where you can get more education, that I'll figure it out. Um, I would say I just love learning new things and doing new things. I'm not really afraid of failing because someone will always come pick you up.
It's wonderful, and as you were talking about that, I got the image of you learning to saying yes to learning to pilot a plane, and it's very inspiring. Well, thanks for being on. I know December's an extremely busy month in the church. Thanks for taking some of your time to be on and have this awkwardly awesome conversation with me, and thanks for all the ways you've blessed so many people. I appreciate it.
And Jason, thank you too for the work that you're doing, and thank you for bringing me here and for the memories that I've gotten just from today. It's been really fun.
Well, so so Pat and I have talked a lot over the past few years because we've been working together, as she mentioned, and we just enjoy each other. And today I learned so much more about her than I had known. So there's people all around you, friends, family. You think you know them inside and out. You think they know you inside and out, and you might know each other well, but there's just so much more to talk about. People are interesting. You are interesting. Just keep going with conversations, keep practicing, keep trying to ask new questions. Some will flop, some will lead to a half-hour response. You don't know which is which until you try. And so that's my little pep talk at the end of this. Thanks so much for tuning in to Awkwardly Awesome podcast. Please leave a comment if you're inspired. And thanks for being you. Have an excellent day. Talk to you later. Oh, next week there will be another podcast next Wednesday. So I hope you tune in then. Thanks for being you.